Throughout the John Wick movies, several characters make the comment that John set out to start an entire war just for a car and a puppy. And in a way they are right, as the plot of the existing 3 John Wick movies and the upcoming sequel directly derive from the death of the puppy and the theft of his car. Let's look at it this way. Without these events, John Wick never goes to war against Viggo Tarasov, nor does he return to being an assassin who is finally forced to kill Santino D'Antonio within the premises of the Continental Hotel, so he is never excommunicated nor goes to war against the High Table. Now the question is it worth going through all this for a car and a dog? I mean, maybe the dog is harder to replace, but can't John Wick buy another Mustang Boss 429 with those gold coins he seems to have everywhere? One that's exactly like the one they stole from him? Maybe he could, but that new Mustang might not have the same identity as the previous one. And to be able to explain why this happens, we need to talk about an ancient Greek paradox. But using John Wick because we all know everything is better with John Wick. Welcome to Go, your source for geek culture tidbits and mind-nourishing content. Today we will explain why John Wick feels such a strong attachment to some things through something I call the John Wick car paradox. The original paradox I'm talking about tells the story of how the Athenian hero Theseus set sail on his ship to the city of Crete to face the fierce Minotaur, a monster with the head of a bull and the body of a man who devours 14 Athenians every 3 years. When Theseus kills the Minotaur and triumphantly returns home, the ship he set sail on was preserved at the docks of Athens as a reminder of Theseus's heroism. It should be clarified that it would have been much more heroic if Theseus had killed the Minotaur using only a pencil, but I guess Greek stories are afraid of success. As the years went by, the ship deteriorated and gradually many of its parts were replaced until there were no original parts of the ship left. The question here is it still Theseus' ship? It turns out that this paradox was first told by the historian Plutarch in the 1st century. It was then expanded by the philosopher Thomas Hobbes in the 17th century until it finally reached its maximum version in the 21st century, incorporating John Wick. The paradox would then be as follows. When Joseph Tarasov steals John Wick's Mustang in the first movie, he embarks on a super dangerous mission to get it back. He can't just buy another car like it because John Wick wants his Mustang, perhaps because he has good memories with it, or maybe because he wants the photo with his wife that he keeps in his glove compartment. Either way, another Mustang, even if it's visually identical, wouldn't give him these things. When John finally manages to recover his car at the beginning of the second movie, his Mustang is quite damaged, so he has to go to his trusted mechanic Aurelio to fix it, who tells him that the engine is about to fall out, the chassis is bent, the transmission, windshield and axle are destroyed, etc. If Aurelio replaces each of these parts, is it still John Wick's Mustang in the end? I'm not referring to the question of ownership, but is it the same car that John holds so dear? You might think so, but the truth is that the situation is much more complicated than one might think. Let's then see where the real conflict is through 2 possible scenarios. Scenario number 1. Let's exaggerate and suppose that the entire Mustang was damaged to the extent that Aurelio had to replace all the parts with new ones. Is the rebuilt car still John Wick's Mustang even though it doesn't have any original parts? You might tell me no, but then when did it stop being so? For example, if Aurelio only changed the steering wheel or a handle, you would surely think it's still the same car. The question is, how many parts of the car have to be changed for it to no longer be the same? Scenario number 2. Now, let's think that Aurelio and his mechanical magic were also able to take all the broken parts from John Wick's Mustang, repair them, and form another identical car. If it has the original parts, then wouldn't this be the real John Wick's Mustang? This is where the paradox comes in, because if this is true, then we already have 2 completely identical Mustangs that we could well call John Wick's car. So it turns out that does John Wick now have 2 Mustangs? Before you rack your brain, I must tell you that there is no completely correct answer to this, as only John Wick can decide which is his car and why, as he and we may have different perceptions of a Mustang, something that has to do with something called fungibility. It turns out there are things that are fungible, let's say objects that when they are worn or deteriorated can be replaced by identical ones without much complication. For example, if I have a pair of black Converse sneakers and they wear out, I can always buy another pair just like them and they would have exactly the same value to me. On the other hand, if someone kills John Wick's puppy, they should know they're in serious trouble, as there's no way we can replace the puppy. Not only because it's a living being, but because it's the last gift from his deceased wife, who is as dead as you would be if you decide to harm John's puppy. These types of assets are called non-fungible. If you notice, in the movie we are told that John has a great affection for his car. So much so that his wife gave him the puppy precisely so that he could learn to love another living being. This tells us that for John, his Mustang is irreplaceable because he has already developed a personal connection with it. That is, now the Mustang is non-fungible. With this in mind, we can understand why John feels this important bond with some things and why John is able to risk his own life for them. Similarly, all of us unconsciously know what things we consider important and why, and it is precisely our memories and experiences with objects like Mustangs, if I had one, that give them identity, something that definitely cannot be bought, even if you have gold coins scattered everywhere. If you're interested in learning more about the topic of identity, I have a video where I explain this topic using the movie Rango. I also invite you to subscribe to my channel as it helps me a lot to continue taking geek culture very seriously. I am Go, the Geek Monitor, and I invite you to keep looking beyond the obvious in the next video.